To create a fascist movement, you need an energetic leader, leading a group of people who possess more than the average share of free time, brutality and stupidity. Then you fascinate the fools with emotional excitement, and you muscle the intelligent with terrorism. These were the words of British philosopher Bertrand Russell in 1940. He said the technique for creating a fascist movement is as old as the hills. And I would add it's everlasting. For today, 85 years later, we are seeing another rise of fascism. When Russell mentions an energetic leader leading a movement of stupid but brutal people, many Russians think of Vladimir Putin. Hungarians think of Viktor Orban. And if you live in the United States, you now think of Donald Trump. But how can fascism still be effective today when we've seen it all before? And in this dire moment, how can we defeat fascism and save the free world? Let's take a closer look. To fight fascism, we need to understand fascism. So in this episode, I will show you 3 characteristics that separate fascism from democracy: power, governance, and justice. And I will reveal the strengths and weaknesses of fascism because knowing both is our first step towards winning. We begin by looking at power. In medieval times, kings would rule until their death. But modern democracy changed that by giving people the right to vote. Consequently, in a democracy, the means for winning power is popularity. We think this is normal, but we forget that throughout history, dictatorships have been the norm. And if you're thinking, good riddance, we got rid of that, I'm sorry to report the free world is shrinking. And for the first time in decades, autocracies now outnumber democracies. We expect our democracies to be resilient because few would vote for someone who openly state they will end democracy. But there's a trick, which aspiring dictators use. They spread disinformation, they sow distrust and reinforce cultural division. They raise their level of fear. This way, they scare voters into thinking the heavy-handed methods of fascism are necessary to make us safe again. In Germany 100 years ago, Adolf Hitler did just that by segregating people into 2 groups. The chosen people, which was the ethnic German majority, and the unwanted, which initially just meant the Jewish population. By constantly claiming that Jews were the source of every problem, Hitler turned them into an enemy, and that served 2 purposes. First, when fearing a common enemy, it is our human nature to focus on this perceived danger and pay less attention to a dictator in the covert process of transforming society into a fascist dictatorship. And second, by dehumanizing the unwanted, fascist leaders get away with subjecting this group to mistreatment without meeting much resistance, as people outside the group still feel safe. This slowly normalizes violence, injustice, and oppression. And gradually fascists then expand the definition of the unwanted group to encompass more and more people, until anyone can be subjected to mistreatment. This introduces a powerful dichotomy. Either you're with us, or you are with the unwanted. And at this point, no one wants to be the unwanted. Donald Trump is doing just that. Think of how many times he told his voters this phrase about immigrants.
They're coming from prisons, they're coming from jails, they're coming from mental institutions and insane asylums.
Research from the Marshall Project shows Trump repeated this claim 560 times, without ever documenting a single real-world example of this happening. In fascism, endless repetition is what transforms one person's lies into everyone's truth. And to really drive it home, Trump said this.
We got a lot of work to do. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions.
This unique phrase really let the fascist cat out of the bag because it's a striking flashback to a 1925 book in which its author claimed Jews were poisoning the blood of Germany. That was the book Mein Kampf, written by Adolf Hitler. As soon as Trump got elected, he too began expanding the definition of the unwanted. On the campaign trail, Trump talked about deporting murderers and drug traffickers and rapists. But by May, he had deported 120,000 people who had no criminal record, and by November, statistics showed that only 5% of the people arrested by ICE had a violent conviction, while 73% had no prior convictions at all. This is the reason farmers who may have voted for Trump now see their own workers deported. It's the reasons Hispanics who voted for Trump see their family members disappeared. They were tricked by the fascist method, manipulation. But now comes the hard part for any fascist, staying in power. Because transforming an entire democracy into a fascist dictatorship takes a long time, and the transition period is volatile as more and more people see the erosion of democracy and begin to fight back. So how do fascists remain in power? Hitler's Nazi party was getting unpopular in 1932, and the Nazis lost 34 seats in parliament. So Hitler bet on manipulation once more and held new elections in March 1933. Hitler used his paramilitary force, die Sturmabteilung, to unleash a widespread campaign of violence against members of other political parties. He spread propaganda across the nation, and his other paramilitary group, die Schutzstaffel, or the SS, was used to monitor the elections to secure the outcome Hitler wanted. The manipulation worked, and the Nazi Party gained 10.8 percentage points. Hitler formed a majority coalition government, and just 18 days later, they made Hitler dictator of Germany. Trump is now in this same volatile transition period, and just like Hitler, he desperately needs to win the upcoming midterm elections. But unlike Hitler, Trump does not have a private paramilitary force like die Schutzstaffel. Instead, Trump has tripled the budget of ICE to $28.7 billion. This has allowed ICE to increase their deadly weapons spending by 700%. So Trump too can intimidate and spread violence across the nation with the military force he alone controls. Unlike Hitler, Trump cannot take control of printing presses and radio transmitters to spread propaganda. Instead, Trump has initiated legal battles against news media like ABC, CNN, CBS, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, and even the British BBC. All in an attempt to stifle the free press. So far, this has only worked on the BBC, who is now censoring historian Rutger Bregman by re-editing the annual radio lecture to erase his findings that Trump is the most openly corrupt president in American history. Apparently, BBC thinks Winston Churchill taught us, "We shall surrender on the beaches, we shall surrender on the landing grounds, and in the fields, and in the media too." To protect his propaganda messages from scrutiny, Trump has tried to hide the worsening US economy. First, he fired Erica McIntyre, who was commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because her organization revealed unemployment is on the rise. And in November, Trump cancelled the release of the GDP data for the third quarter, which would otherwise have told the inconvenient truth that Trump's economy is failing. In a direct assault on democracy, Trump has also ordered Republican governors to redraw the maps of their election districts, what we call gerrymandering, and this can have serious consequences. For simplicity, imagine we live in a state with just 9 people, divided into 3 horizontal election districts. Each district elects 1 seat in Congress. The result is 2 districts elect a Republican and 1 district elects a Democrat. But Trump wants the districts redrawn, so if a governor then redraws the map with 3 vertical districts, Republicans will win all 3 seats by a 2-to-1 majority. Of course, This is blatantly undemocratic, but Trump is now fighting in court to make it happen. If you hear anyone say that surely Trump is not trying to end democracy, show them what he said at the Believers Summit when campaigning in 2024.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you.
So
Christians.
On our political spectrum from democracy to fascism, all of the above shows Trump is not betting on winning democratically through popularity. Trump prepares for fascist manipulation. To function properly, both democratic governments and fascist dictatorships need to govern, but they do so by very different means. In democratic societies, we govern through compromise. Whether we are building a new subway or making changes to the tax code, we find common ground. Even though compromises are not always ideal for everyone, at least democracy delivers reasonable solutions for most people most of the time. The problem is, compromise requires intelligent thinking, and as psychologist Abraham Maslow explained in 1943, humans are motivated by needs. Our basic instincts do not tell us to compromise, but to fulfill our needs. Imagine you and I are involved in the same plane crash on a remote island. We quickly realize that by collaborating, we will increase our chances of survival. So we go out hunting together, and on the way we agree to split the food 50-50. That is our compromise. But we were not alone on that plane, and as we bring back the food to the crash site, we meet all the other hungry passengers who are now highly motivated by their basic instincts. If society was normal, no one could take our food. Laws and law enforcement would prevent that, but all it takes is one aspiring fascist leader to convince the hungry to listen to their basic instincts. Forget the rules, because when you and I die, they can have all the food. That is what enables fascism. The fascist promises those inside the fascist group do not need to compromise because they can brute force their solutions upon society. This is why, for thousands of years, our world was violent. Stronger tribes killed weaker tribes, and fascist dictators ruled the world. Gradually, anarchy has been replaced by governance. We have formed advanced societies with laws and regulations to ensure prosperity for all. And in this rule-based world, the fascists lose power. Those who dream of being dictators are just citizens like you and me, subject to the same laws as you and me. And doesn't that suck if you really want to be king? Fortunately for the fascists, they still possess one powerful weapon to fight democracy: capitalism. And some of the most successful business people who are really tired of playing by the rules happen to have a lot of capital. So it's no surprise that someone like Elon Musk would seek influence on US politics. To control public discourse, he first acquired Twitter for $44 billion, and then proceeded to spend $277 million and a lot of effort to get Trump elected. This bought Musk the job as leader of the Department of Government Efficiency, which began firing thousands of employees in various organizations responsible for the public oversight of private companies. Companies like Neuralink, SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter and XAI, all owned by Elon Musk. According to a report from Public Citizen, Elon Musk's companies were facing 17 different serious federal investigations, and they were all shot down. Obviously, this was not a constructive political compromise carefully crafted by Congress. Trump's government is disregarding American democracy to brutally force through its own agenda. On our political spectrum, this places Trump far away from democratic compromise, all the way towards fascism and brute force governance. For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law. These were the words of Peruvian dictator Oscar Benavides. They are chilling words because they send us back to the medieval era where kings and noblemen would commit crimes with impunity, before French revolutionaries finally dragged them to the guillotine to end the injustice. French politician Marquis de Lafayette drafted the French Declaration of Human and Civic Rights, which impacted the democratic development throughout the world. It began with Article 1. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Let's not be blind to the fact that it took France another 155 years to give women equal rights. But my point is, this revolution inspired modern-day equality before the law. It was what US Senator John Bingham wrote in the 14th Amendment in 1866. No state can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And yes, that was a Republican ensuring everyone, no matter your gender, race or citizenship, is treated equally under the law. But sadly, fascism is more on the side of Oscar Benavides, because in a fascist society, segregating people into two groups also influences how laws are applied. This is the reason Jews had their properties confiscated in Nazi Germany, a practice the Nazis did not subject their own chosen people to. In modern times, it is the reason Putin's enemies keep falling out of windows, with investigators mysteriously never finding out who pushed them, because fascist leaders prefer selective justice. The most striking example of this happened in the United States when Trump came back into power. The US Department of Justice had been investigating the January 6 rioters, and 1,270 of them had already been convicted in a court of law. These people had committed serious crimes, including violent assault on police officers, that led to 140 officers being injured. But because these criminals were MAGA supporters, Trump's chosen people, Trump felt differently about January 6.
But that was a day of love.
So on Trump's first day in office, he granted clemency to nearly 1,600 people. And in stark contrast, Trump's treatment of his perceived enemies has been vicious. On September 21, Trump was writing a private message to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi. But it was 44 minutes past midnight, and maybe Trump was tired because he accidentally typed the message into the Truth Social app and hit post. Pam, what about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia? Justice must be served now. Comey refers to former FBI Director James Comey, who led the bureau when Trump was investigated in 2017. And just 4 days after Trump's post, Comey was indicted. Currently, the Justice Department is also trying to indict Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, and Letitia refers to Letitia James, who was indicted on October 9, and that was only the beginning. Trump has initiated legal action against his former national security advisor, now Trump critic John Bolton, as well as former special counsel Jack Smith, who investigated Trump in relation to the January 6 riots and more. And lately, Trump called for the execution of Mark Kelly, a political opponent, astronaut and former captain of the Navy, whom Pete Hegseth is now trying to recall into service, to have him court-martialed. All because these people are defenders of democracy. So, on our political spectrum, Trump is far away from the equal justice we know in democracies. Like every fascist in history, Trump is all the way towards selective justice. As Oscar Benavides said, "For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law."
It's all just smoke and mirrors. Never trust in what you see.
Are you stupid? Are you a stupid
Every
person?
time I follow blindly, it just leaves me right back to me.
For anyone who cares about democracy, 2025 has been a horrible year. In our lifetime, the US has been a beacon for democracy, and now a darkness has descended upon Washington. But I promise you, there is a beautiful light on the horizon. Because as carefully as Trump has tried to copy the fascist playbook, he has made one fatal oversight. Donald, we are not in Nazi Germany anymore. Adolf Hitler was a patient, evil man. He spent 14 years carefully planning the rise of fascism. He used the imperceptibility of minute changes and slowly groomed the German population into believing fascism was the only solution. Trump, however, is trying to do all that in just months. Hitler lived in a country isolated by the language barrier, where propaganda would have maximum impact. He came to power in the golden age of radio, and he controlled the broadcast. Americans do not speak German. They speak an international language which streams the truth from voices all over the world. Like Adolf Hitler, Trump is trying to control the narrative with a fire hose of falsehoods.
How big is that?
But the truth spreads like nature's unstoppable rain. Hitler rose when few women were educated and men dominated the world, men who by nature are more receptive to brutal fascist ideas. Trump and his cabinet have copied fascism because fascism nearly brought the free world to its knees. The key word here is nearly, because freedom is a force which is not easily subdued, and in the land of the free, clinging on to power with oppression is certainly a losing strategy. Trump is not der Führer in one homogeneous country. He is president of 50 independent states, which all have their own police forces, their own judges upholding the rule of law. And they all run their own elections. Trump's henchmen have left equal justice behind, because in our moral universe, fascism is like a black hole where good people know to stay away, but bad people get sucked right in. Think of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who has now given illegal orders to kill sailors on boats suspected of drug trafficking. This has led to the murder of 83 sailors in international waters. No indictments, no trials, just brute force executions. Pete Hegseth is in so deep, there is no way back. Or think of Christine Noem, who proudly took photos of herself in a concentration camp she deported immigrants to, in violation of the US Constitution. No indictments, no trial, there is no way back for her. Or think of Pam Bondi, who is running this selective justice department. There is no way back. Hitler had the foresight to hire some really twisted minds, people who could murder in cold blood and go straight to dinner without feeling sick. Trump, on the other hand, has made a drunken Fox News host leader of his military, a conspiracy theorist leader of the FBI, and an immature liar is now in charge of his propaganda. And for a time, this clown bus is blazing down the highway, full of idiots celebrating their illusion of power, while the wannabe dictator plays driver at the wheel. But there's a sharp turn up ahead. And when the midterm elections come, I predict the American people will make that turn, while the bus will tumble down the hill. Hitler's evil men thought his empire would last forever. But in November 1945, an officer closed the door to a courtroom in Nuremberg, and their crimes saw the light of day. In 2026, another November is coming, because, as the real king once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.